Welcome to a lesson on square root function.
You will be learning how square root functions work and what affects them.
The parent function for this function is y equals the square root of x, or f of x equals the square root of x.
The range of the parent function is 0 to infinity, and the domain is also 0 to infinity. The domain of this function is always increasing. The rate of change for the parent function over the interval 1 to 4 is 1/3. Okay, now let's see what happens when you alter the parent function.
Let's see what happens when you put a negative sign in front of the parent function. When the function becomes negative, it will be flipped upside down. It will still begin at the origin. The domain of the function will be 0 to infinity, and the range will be 0 to infinity. Now that the function is flipped, this function is written as y equals the negative square root of x, or f of x equals the negative square root of x. Although this function is becoming negative, no matter what, the domain will always be increasing. The rate of change of this function over the interval 4 to 9 is negative 1/5.
Next, let's see what happens when you add a constant to the parent function under the radical. Our equation is y, or f of x, equals the square root of x plus 3. When a constant is added or subtracted under the radical, the function will be shifted left or right. When we add 3 under the radical, the function is shifted to the left 3 units. This is counterintuitive, which means when you add a constant, the function will be shifted left, and when you subtract a constant, the function is shifted right. The domain is negative 3 to infinity, and the range is 0 to infinity. The rate of change of this function over the interval negative 3 to 1 is 1/2. Always remember that the shifting left and right is done with the constant under the radical.
Now let's try adding a constant outside of the radical. Using the equation y equals x, the square root of x plus 3, when you graph this parent function, will be shifted up on the y-axis 3 units. Due to the adding of the 3 outside the radical, if you were to subtract 3 outside of the radical, the parent function would shift 3 units down. The domain of this function, y, or f of x, equals the square root of x plus 3. It is 0 to infinity. And the range of this function is 0 to infinity. The rate of change over the interval 0 to 1 would be 1. When graphing the square root function, remember your function can only shift up and down if the constant is added or subtracted outside the radical.
When graphing square root functions, remind yourself that when a constant is added or subtracted under the radical, it's moved side to side. But when a constant is outside the radical, it is shifted up and down. Also, don't forget that when a constant is under the radical, the shifting is counterintuitive. Remember, the function is always increasing, and when it becomes negative, it is only flipped upside down. Knowing these details is very important to properly graphing your function. And when you find the rate of change, be sure to use the change in y over the change in x with 2 points on the graph.
In real life, the square root function could be an example of someone saving their money over a period of time. So remember to practice your square root functions.